Well, a delegation from the United States Congress House Judiciary Committee has been attending a meeting about free speech chaired by none other than Nigel Farage today. Several US officials, including President Donald Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance, have expressed their concerns at what they consider to be the erosion of free speech in the United Kingdom. Let's go to Westminster now and speak to GB News political correspondent Catherine Forster. Catherine, what's been happening?
Well, good afternoon. I'm used to talking to MPs down here, but we're joined by three US Republican congressmen who sit on the House Judiciary Committee. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time this afternoon on GB News. Congressman Jim Jordan, if I can start with you, you are chairman of the committee. We're a long way from Washington. What has brought you over here this summer?
First Amendment to the Constitution. We're concerned about free expression here in the United Kingdom and in Europe, but we're primarily concerned about the impacts your laws can have on American citizens. Under the First Amendment, American citizens enjoy 5 fundamental freedoms: your right to practice your faith, your right to assemble, your right to petition the government, free press, free speech. I tell people all the time, the most important of those 5 liberties is the last one, our right to talk. Because if you can't speak, you can't practice your faith, you can't share your faith, you can't petition your government, you can't criticize your government, and you don't have a free press. That is the most fundamental right we have as free citizens. And when the government infringes on that, like we're seeing with the Online Safety Act, like we're seeing with the Digital Services Act in Europe, and then there's some spillover impact on American citizens, that is a concern. We had a witness last year in Congress. She was a journalist from Canada. She made a great statement. She said, free expression is the hallmark of Western civilization. The ability to debate, the ability to argue and have debates and have votes and settle disputes that way, because the alternative to that is frightening. So we think this is critically important, and that's why we're here.
And Congressman Fitzgerald, there's a row today because the science minister has been very critical of Nigel Farage. We've got this Online Safety Act that has come in. The Prime Minister yesterday telling your president that there was absolutely no censorship with this, that it was all about protecting children. Do you buy that?
I don't, and the American companies that we have been speaking to have laid out the case. Their legal teams have been battling on many fronts now over the last couple of years on just that issue of censorship and trying to kind of curtail whatever they're putting up online. So I think right now what you're going to see is a continued fight, kind of step by step, to make sure that this doesn't creep into America and is not something that we need to be worried about in the House of Representatives.
But Congressman Kiley, tech firms do have a duty of care, do they not? There are children accessing all sorts on the internet. As a TV company, we are guided by regulations, the same for publishers. They're putting content out there. How do you deal with this in America? They do have a duty, don't they?
They absolutely do have a duty, and I think that narrowly tailored regulations designed to protect kids are appropriate and absolutely necessary. But what we're seeing with legislation like the Online Safety Act, the Digital Services Act in the EU, is something very different. We are seeing a rising tide of censorship in the West. We see it in the EU, we're seeing it in the UK. We saw it in the US as well over the last few years, but we've turned a corner in our country in large measure thanks to the work of the Judiciary Committee under Chairman Jordan's leadership. And so we're here to dialogue with those who are fighting for this shared tradition between our countries here in the UK and in the EU, because this is, when it comes to a liberal democracy, this is the whole ballgame. You can't have a functioning liberal democracy without robust protections for freedom of speech.
We also had some horrific murders a year ago. There were terrible riots resulting from disinformation online. Now the police are looking at tweets, at things that putting on social media to try to sort of stave off further trouble. What's your view of that and policing tweets? Back to you, if I can.
Well, I mean, you look at recent history, it seems to me many times the biggest purveyor of misinformation, disinformation is the government. I mean, just look at during COVID in our country. I think just about everything the Biden administration told us about COVID turned out to be wrong. They told us the virus didn't come from a lab. They told us that the vaccinated couldn't get the virus. They told us that the vaccinated couldn't transmit the virus. They told us masks worked. They told us 6 feet social distancing was based on science. They told us that this was the first virus in history where there was no such thing as natural immunity. So when you look at history, typically it's the government who gives all kinds of information that is not accurate. And the idea that you're going to go after political speech, Kevin is right. We don't want harmful material getting to kids, but there's a big difference between that and political speech and criticizing the government, for goodness sake. So we're very concerned about that, and that's why we're here. That's why we did our investigation last Congress, to point out the attacks on free expression and on free speech.
And Congressman Fitzgerald, J.D. Vance at the Munich Security Conference a few months ago upset quite a lot of people on this topic, talking about freedom of speech being suppressed, particularly in Scotland, with buffer zones. Do you think that is sort of necessary for Europe and Britain to hear this sort of thing? And finally, what do you say to people that say, well, you didn't like it when Democratic, Labour activists went to support the Democrats? Why are you getting involved in our politics? What's your answer to that?
Yeah, I think Vice President Vance is right. I mean, there's absolutely been kind of a movement and a shift that's been going on. And it's not very obvious sometimes. It's something that you do have to kind of scrutinize and look for. But when you see it, you know it. And I think that's what the vice president was talking about.
And just finally, what do you say, Congressman Kiley, to people that say, why are you here getting yourselves involved in British affairs?
Well, we're first and foremost protecting our own citizens, because we've seen very specific examples of where suppressing speech actually impacts American citizens. And there's also this sort of globalizing effect, call it the Brussels effect, and certainly augmented by what's happening in the UK, where platforms are forced to change their policies in a pro-censorship direction that impacts citizens all around the world. And so at the end of the day, I think it's important that our allies, who we have so many shared values with, stand with us as we fight against forces that exist elsewhere in the world that are very much opposed to freedom of all kinds. And I think there's a lot more that we have in common in the way of values than divide us at this point. And I think these conversations are really healthy for everyone involved.
Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for talking to us on GB News Today. Really appreciate it. Back to you in the studio. Clearly a tension between freedom of speech and keeping children safe. I expect we will be hearing a lot about this in the coming weeks and months.
Yeah, Catherine Forster there. Some very, very clever men, in my opinion. I think they absolutely nailed it on the head. Free speech, in my opinion, has been under attack in this country for a very, very long time. And the online safety bill is the pinnacle of that tyranny. It really, really feels to me like Britain is heading in this abysmal direction. The things that we've never voted for, things that people are deeply unhappy with, and that the reasons why that these ridiculous laws come into place is because governments use the guise of things like children's safety to convince you that it's a good thing. But anyway, lots more to come up tonight on GB News.